tell you, 2020, it's been a crazy year, you know, this COVID-19, it's all kind of, what's going on right now? What's happening? I hope they don't ask me for any money. I definitely didn't ask for this. Well, this is going to be for free. I didn't ask for this. This is happening. I don't believe this is happening. I don't have the money, dude. Can someone hit the rewind button on 2020? Rewind button on 2020. I don't think I want to do this again. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show a Canadian-based comedian and actor who has starred in a number of films, including Sleeper Agent, Summer Camp, and the documentary That Mennonite Joke. He was recently named one of the best of the fest at the Burbank Comedy Festival in California. His debut album, Apple Pie and Scars, was named one of the top 10 comedy albums of the year. All three of his comedy albums reached #1 on the iTunes comedy charts. His latest special, Unlit, has already garnered millions of views collectively online and is in the top 10 most favorited specials on Dry Bar Comedy. His clean stand-up comedy act has gained him many accolades, including placing second in the World Series of Comedy in Las Vegas. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show the very funny Matt Falk. What's up, Matt?
Thank you very much. That was lovely. I felt like I should have been off stage when I was listening to that. I felt like running on as it was happening. This is great. Thanks for having me.
Man, it is a pleasure and honor having you on the show, man. I tell you, as comedians, we're dealing with this COVID-19 thing. It's difficult to perform. I haven't been on stage live since March. What's it been like for you? Have you been doing, Zoom, outdoor shows? What's been going on?
Yeah, it's been crazy. In March, that was my last, one of my last big shows. I was traveling. I was in a different province. And this was just when everything was starting and people were still freaking out. We didn't know what was happening, how close it was coming and all this kind of stuff. So I remember I was very nervous. I remember being backstage and they didn't let anybody backstage with me. And I was just sitting there in this green room all by myself, just terrified. Anyone who knocked on the door, I was like, just stay back a little bit. And then eventually that was my last travel gig. And since then, I've been doing online shows. I've been doing outdoor shows. It's been a challenge. It's been different.
Now you're up in Canada. What part of Canada are you in?
I'm in Manitoba. So Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm just south of Winnipeg, Manitoba.
So it's going to be a little bit difficult to do outdoor shows, I would imagine.
I tell you, Maurice, listen, it's the audience. You got to be really good in Manitoba to keep an audience outside for an hour-long set. I'm telling you, because about 30 minutes in, when the crowd has frostbite and they go, I don't think this is as funny as it was in the beginning, they start to leave.
Yeah, they start to leave. What do you think about the Zoom shows, though, Matt? How do you feel about doing those?
I don't mind them. Okay. I've been doing a thing where I've been muting my audience, which honestly, I wish I could have that technique during some live shows as well. But I've been doing this thing because before I did the mute, I had one show where the audience was interacting with me and they were laughing. But every time they laughed, the mic went to them and the screen cut to them and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so then people stopped hearing me and they could just hear someone in screen number 18 chuckling. And so it was awful. So now I do the mute thing. Everyone's muted and I'm just going off of their reactions. I have no idea. I'm doing comedy with zero response from the audience. It's like the first 5 years of my career.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And then you have that delayed reaction. You tell a joke and then they laugh 3 seconds later. And then you have to kind of get used to that part of it.
That's right.
You're people over here, grandma's eating her chicken noodle soup. I think grandma's like, what am I doing at a comedy show? But anyway, no, it's different. Yeah. I'm kind of getting used to it, but it's still, dude, it's nothing like performing live,
Well, because with a live show, there's an energy that you can't replicate, you know? And when
Yeah.
people are watching on Zoom, even people have told me this, like I've kind of reminded an audience, just so you know, I can see you. So kind of like nod and laugh physically. And people tell me, oh, I forgot. It felt like I was watching TV. They literally forget that anyone can see them, that they're part of a live show, because we're so used to looking at screens when we're streaming anything. But we're not used to doing this interactively.
Dude, I love the humor in Canada. I've always loved it going back. And of course, we talked before coming on live. I'm a little bit older than you. So I go all the way back to John Candy and the Rick Moranis and, you know, Eugene Levy, those guys from SCTV. I love those shows growing up, and great comedy of Michael Myers and so forth. A lot of great comedy in Canada. What's the stand-up scene like up there?
It's great. I mean, in Winnipeg, which is where I do my comedy mostly, there was in the beginning, it was kind of slow. There's one amazing comedy club, literally like the best club in the country is right in my home city, Winnipeg, Manitoba. But other than that, there wasn't a lot going on. This was like 10 years ago or something like that. And then my wife and I, we moved. We went to Abbotsford, BC. We went to near Toronto for a while. And as soon as I left, then the underground scene just exploded in Canada. So I think I was holding it back or something, because as soon as I was out of the picture, then it just exploded. But now there's like, well, pre-COVID, there was rooms almost every single night you could get on stage. The community is incredibly supportive. They love each other. They do shows together. There's not a lot of rivalry. There's not a lot of competition. There's a little bit of it, but there's a few of us that try to bridge some of those gaps and go between the two rival groups and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's a lovely scene.
Yeah, I know Leland Klassen is a good comedian from Canada. He was on my show not too long ago, and I saw you with Leland in the film Sleeper Agent not too long ago. My wife and I thought you were awesome in that film. What was it like working with Leland?
Boy, contractually, I'm not allowed to tell you the truth. He makes everyone sign a non-disclosure agreement before they start working with him, because he's difficult to work with.
So we're talking, Matt, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, he's
lost a little bit on the Wi-Fi there, but
you lost me? Man. Okay, well that was probably Leland. He's hacked into my system. He's cutting me out because I'm talking smack. No. So Leland's amazing. I've worked with Leland. He was the guy that got me kind of into the comedy scene. He was my mentor for so long. And so I've worked with Leland my entire life. I've been on tours with him and everything. So I'm used to working with him, but I've never, we've worked on TV shows together, but this is our first feature-length film we ever did together. And it was great. Yeah. So Leland not only is starring in the movie, he co-wrote the movie. It was based off of his premise and his idea that he had already years ago, and he was also producing the thing. So he was wearing all these hats. So it was really fun to get to watch him work, because on set, you know, you're working with your actor buddy, but he's also producing, and he's also thinking about the lines, and he's also, so it was a lot going on. But I was so impressed with how well he did everything.
Well, there was a certain synergy that you guys had on film. You know, I had never seen you before, and I had spoken with Leland. You were in there with Mark Christopher Lawrence, someone I also know as well. Very talented guy, Mark is. And so you had like a real vibe of energy in there. You weren't in there a ton, but the times you were on screen was really funny, you know. Funny, man. And so that's great to find out that you are a comedian that's been doing this for some time. I mean, you're relatively young, but you started when you were in your teens, correct?
Yeah, I started at Leland Klassen's comedy tournament when I was 17 years old. That was my first official time kind of doing stand-up in front of an audience that wasn't my hometown, you know?
Yeah.
And boy, it was insane. And then I was so young, I think, that I got like kind of a free pass. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was able to string a sentence together with a punchline at the end, and people went, "Oh, this kid is a prodigy," you know.
That's what happens. Yes.
He's a comedic genius. You see this 17, and I always look a little younger than I actually am. So I was 17. I look like I'm 14. People going, this is brilliant. We're watching the next great comedian of our time. and then I remember around like 19 years old, it shifted because I remember going on stage at, I think it was I can't remember. It was a club in Edmonton, Alberta. And I went on stage and I was doing the same material I've always done. And I did poorly. The audience was kind of looking at me like, this isn't enough, you know? And I realized at that point, oh, I can't coast off of the fact that I'm the young guy doing this anymore. I have to like actually put the work in, and I actually have to write jokes that are funny for someone my age, because now everybody doing it is my age. We're all in our 20s. We're all, you know, and now especially there's younger guys than me, hot, like young guys that are coming up that are like hungry for this, you know?
Yes.
And they want it really bad. So I have to like really put the work. And I had a real crisis during like 5 years or so where I was going, what's my voice? Where do I fit in this world? But yeah.
Well, you know, that's what happens when you're young. When you start out really young like that, there you have that cute factor. Oh, that's so cute. He's so funny. And, oh, he's, you know, you get all of those freebies because you're young. I mean, my son, I was telling you before we came on live, you know, he started when he was 14. He's 22 now. There's that gap as you go from being a child or a kid to a man where, you know, it's like, oh man, wait a minute, hold on. This isn't as easy as I thought it was. It's like, you really got to put the work in, you got to write and all of those things, because that kid stuff, that's gone forever.
Done. It's over. It's over. But what you do have, the advantage that I had, the advantage that your son has, is that there's a foundation now that he can kind of work off of. So a lot of guys, they start, I say guys is my term for every single human being. A lot of people, this is how sexist I naturally am. I'm not even trying. I'm part of the problem. I know I am. So what I got to do is I realize that there's like a foundation that I've laid. I've been on stage now for 5 years, 5 years longer than most people starting off right now. So even though I have to kind of start from scratch and write new material and all this kind of stuff, I still had all that stage experience to build off of. So someone like me, someone like your son, that's the advantage that people who start young have, is that, you know, there's 5 years of experience coming into it.
There is. And you know, Matt, I learned something in doing my research on you, and you have a documentary coming out called That Mennonite Joke. I think it's already been done, I think. Yeah. But I was reading up on the Mennonites. I didn't realize the history of the Mennonites. Like, they're very similar to the Amish and so forth. And so I learned a few things. I'm like, whoa, man, I didn't know all this stuff. But tell me a little bit about the documentary and everything that's involved with it.
So the documentary, it's called That Mennonite Joke. It's about humor in the Mennonite culture. It's about 4 minutes long. No, it's it's basically, I had this guy, Orlando Braun. He approached me and he said, I want to make a documentary about humor and Mennonites. And people approach me all the time, Maurice. They say things, they go like, hey, I want to make a movie. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it never happens, right? Never. No one ever gets the money. No one ever does the work. So I said to him, oh, you want to make a documentary about Mennonites? Sure. If you can get the funding for that, then I am totally on board. Sure. Expecting to never hear from this guy again. And he calls me up a couple months later. He's like, great, we got fully funded. We got the grants. Let's do this. I was like, what? Someone actually wants to see this movie? So we spent like a ton of time talking to great comedians who are also Mennonites, great humorists, authors, novelists, all the way from, Mr. Leland Clausen to Miriam Taves, who's a brilliant novelist as well. And we spoke to them about how their Mennonite background affects their comedy and their art now. It was really insightful. It was really funny. And it was a really big eye opener for me. It kind of got me excited once again for my culture.
Well, what I know about the Amish is there's a point in a young child's life where I think they're 18 or 19 and they get a chance to go out into the world, decide whether I would stay in the world or go back to the Amish community. Are the Mennonites similar in that way?
You're talking about the Rumspringer? No. So that's right. There's different groups of Mennonites. There's some that are way more conservative than there are others. There's some that, there's Hutterites in our community. There's Amish people. I don't think there's Amish people in Manitoba. If there are, they're hiding very, very well.
Right.
They might be in the bush somewhere. We haven't found them yet. But so not every Mennonite is the same. Some live on colonies and some they're among us. You don't even know you're talking to a Mennonite until you realize that they're eating sunflower seeds during their conversation with you. And that's when it comes to anyway. So I didn't have anything like that. So I grew up in a Mennonite church. I was baptized in a Mennonite church. My mom was born in Paraguay. So that's kind of how the Mennonite traditions kind of were passed down. The Mennonite food is the biggest part of it, but I didn't really have those kind of experiences like a Rumspringa or anything like that. Now I go to a non-denominational church. So it's, my Mennonite ancestry is kind of just that. It's like, it's a thing that's more in my past. I probably hold on to some of the values and some of the things like, I would still consider myself a pacifist, which is a Mennonite thing. I still kind of hold fast to a lot of those traditions that were passed down, from Mennonite to Mennonite, as it were.
Well, that's what John Candy's character said in the movie Stripes. I'm a pacifist. Well, no. So look, I ask you this because as far as comedy goes relative to the Mennonite community, how was it received when you wanted to become a comedian, and how is it generally received, comedy within that community?
It's a great question, and it's a complicated question to answer because Mennonites are naturally funny. A lot of people don't know that, but we naturally are very funny people. It's like the Jewish community. The Jewish community has been pushed aside and ostracized for so many years that from that kind of outsider perspective, brilliant comedy formed. It's pretty much the same thing with Mennonites. Mennonites were ostracized and pushed away for so many years, and they were outsiders. So outsiders, they make good comedy. So inside the Mennonite community, there's a lot of comedy. So when I started doing it, I was doing Mennonite jokes. I was making fun of Mennonites and making fun of my heritage and stuff like that. And it was really, really well received. But on the same side, if you go into a really conservative Mennonite church to do comedy, there might be some pushback. But since I grew up in it, I kind of know how to handle it. I know how to dance around it a little bit. But again, everyone's an individual, right? We can't lump people together. And so for the most part, I would say that it just all depends on which Mennonite you end up talking to. Some churches, some groups, they're great with it. And others are like, you can't be saying that here. Some people don't even allow comedy in their church because it shouldn't even mix. Like the church is so holy. This is such a holy space that there's no room for a comedian to come in, which obviously I would disagree with, but I understand and I respect and I don't push.
Well, I think in the evangelical community, it's okay. Comedy is more accepted by far than it used to be, but that there's still subtle pushback that remains still. As it's still not 100% sure that God says it's okay to belly laugh. So, I'm like, so I'm like, please, people, get over it. You can belly laugh. But anyway, that's kind of what it's like. And I love the fact that you're a clean comedian. You're a Christian comedian, just like myself, but comedy is comedy, and you don't have to use profanity to get people to laugh. You don't have to be lewd and crude to make people laugh. You don't have to do that at all. And I love the fact that you're one of the clean guys. You do it the right way. And I work around a lot of profane comedians in Washington, D.C., and they're all younger than me, obviously. And I tell them all the time, I said, listen, I'm not going to judge you. If this is the kind of comedy you want to do, have at it. However, if you really want to be good, I'd have the ability to do clean comedy. Because if you get on a national platform, if you get on Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or Seth Meyers and Stephen Colbert, all these guys, I guarantee you at the drop of a hat, Bill Burr can do a clean set. Dave Chappelle can do a clean set.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Kevin Hart can do a clean set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you have to have the ability to do it. You know, you're not
Exactly.
these guys. A lot of young guys think that their crude humor, all of a sudden, they're going to wake up one day and they're going to be Bill Burr. No. It doesn't work like that. You got to put your work in. So I said all of that, Matt, to say this or to ask this. How does your faith in Christ influence you as a comedian?
Yeah, obviously there's the content side of it. That's the most obvious thing. You know, there's certain things I wouldn't talk about on stage. And that's probably mostly because comedy is supposed to be authentic. Comedy is supposed to be genuine. And if I were to go on stage and if I were to start, swearing a ton or talking about certain things, the audience would be able to sense it. It wouldn't come across as natural. I've always been kind of the same way on stage as I am off stage for the most part. And I think that's the whole thing. You got to be true to yourself. So that's what I do on stage. And that's when you're going to be the funniest. You know, there are comics that are, naturally dirty in their real life, like friends of mine, good friends of mine, the way they talk and the things they talk about, that if they went on stage and started doing like an ultra clean set, it wouldn't make any sense. You'd go, there's something weird about what's going on here. I also agree with you though, that it's a skill that you should definitely develop, being able to take your set, no matter what it looks like, and turning it into a clean set so that you can do TV. It's invaluable. It's so incredibly important. But I think the biggest thing that the biggest way my faith influences my comedy is the stuff that happens behind the scenes.
Okay.
So, for example, I'm not looking out for myself. I'm not doing this so that I can be the most famous and the most wealthy and the most important person on the planet. I'm doing this with a completely different purpose. My purpose is to advance God's kingdom. And that means spreading joy, hope, love, peace, gentleness, self-control, spreading the fruits of his spirit out into the world, healing people that are like going through difficult things, like with laughter, being able to speak truth to power. And sometimes that means, even saying things that the church disagrees with. If I'm saying what God is telling me to say, that sometimes, we can walk that line sometimes. But the important thing is I'm doing this with a purpose. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for other people, and I'm doing it for him. That's the main thing. And the other thing I've noticed too, that when I'm dealing with agents or managers or other people like that, I'm not looking to try to scrape out as much money as possible, because again, it's not about me. I'm living for other people.
Amen. There you go.
When I just recently had a situation where someone reached out to me, a person in authority, and they had said, you need to do X, Y, Z, and it was going to cost me a ton of money. And my natural instinct was, forget it. There's no way I'm doing that. I know my rights, and I'm gonna. And I was furious. But then immediately there's that thing that kicks in that goes, no, I'm not living for myself. I'm living for other people. And the best way to serve and the best way to advance his kingdom is to lay down my life. So I put away all my rights, all what I think I deserved in that moment. And I said, yes, sir, absolutely. I sent him the cash, and it was done. The relationship is stronger. That door is still open. There's been no confrontation, and God provides anyway. So what am I worried about hanging on to that measly money anyway?
I love that you said that. You just reminded me I need to tithe this week too. Thank you, Matt.
So, that's why I told the story, because your church called me and they said, could you nudge Maurice a little bit?
Hey, but Matt, I love what you're saying. The humility that you're expressing is awesome, dude. I mean, before we even started, I prayed to God that we would make this more about him than us, because we're performers, we're entertainers. Of course, we want to get our accolade, our adulation and our plaudits and all of those things. Yeah. But at the end of the day, as followers of Christ, it's about him first.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got to be about him, or we're doing this for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I love the fact that you said that. and so we have to remember it. And it's so easy, Matt. It's so easy to make this about yourself when you're doing this, and everybody's laughing and you crack. Everybody's loving you, and they're, just loving you, man, and just patting you on the back, and all of a sudden you think it's about you. Before you know what hits you, it's like, oh, Lord, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
there I go again.
It's so funny because comedy is cyclical. You go through these waves and these ups and downs. So I always notice that as soon as I start getting really, really prideful and I start thinking, man, maybe I've got something here. Maybe I am a prodigy. Maybe they were right. As soon as that happens, I have a show that just tanks, that just goes in the ground. And immediately I'm like, I'm never going to step foot on stage ever again. So it's comedy has a way of balancing you out. But honestly, the worst thing that can happen for your pride is if you just keep crushing nonstop, because then you start thinking, oh, maybe this is all me. So the point is that you're grounded in something bigger than yourself, so that if the show is great or if the show is awful, it doesn't affect you. You know what I mean? You can stay in that same place, like the Apostle Paul said. He said, I've learned to be content in plenty and in want. If he was a comic, he would have said, I've learned to be content when I'm crushing or when I'm bombing. So you have to, find it.
Well, that's a good analogy. I think that, when you're up there and you're killing, that it's so easy to think you're going to do it every night. And at the moment you think that's what's going to happen, you're going to bomb.
Yeah.
Because it's all about, I still have to put in the work. I still have to, give them the effort that I need to achieve that. And number one, it's like, Lord, thank you for what you did tonight.
Yeah.
And you know what? Using me, you know what I mean?
That's it. And you know what's funny too is that as soon as you start thinking, oh, I don't need to work at this anymore. I'm good, and if you go on stage and you do have a bad show, then what happens is you start blaming the audience. Well, it can't be me. It's got to be them. They're a bad crowd. They didn't get the joke.
Yeah. It's never them. It is never the audience. It's always on the comic. So you're a follower of Christ. You're in the Mennonite community. Now, I'm interested. I'm curious how you came to salvation of Christ, because you're born into a community that's already there. Now, when did it just naturally happen for you that Matt Falk decided, hey, you know what? I need the Lord. Christ died for me. When did that happen for you?
For me, that was really, really young. So I would have been like 5 years old. I wouldn't even have fully understood what any of it meant. I was in the backseat of my parents' car. I asked them a couple questions and it was done. I remember though re-asking God into my life constantly, because I was like, as a kid, I was terrified that I did it wrong or something. I don't know. Maybe that there was like a bad signal. I don't know what I thought, but I thought I had to keep asking, like, hey, okay, God, please, I want to be a Christian. And so I did it numerous times. I rededicated my life so much. That's a very, very Christianese term, rededication. But it's this thing when you've gone through something, then you rededicate, say, I'm gonna whatever. And I did it so often. I went to go see a play with my grandma when I was younger. Mm-hmm. It was called Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, and I rededicated my life there. I would have been like 10. I don't even know. But
after seeing a film like that, you're like, I got to re-up again. I have got to re-up.
I don't know. I'm just to be safe. Let's do it anyway. So I did that on and on and on until I, later on in my teens, when I started realizing my faith more for myself and understanding what it was and becoming more confident in my salvation, but then also realizing what it means to be a Christian. And it doesn't mean, and this is more in the last 10 years, like we're talking, like realizing that it's not about going to church and trying to be perfect. And then when I sin or screw up, now I feel bad forever. It's not about what I can and can't do. It's some of those things, but it's about advancing his kingdom. It's about It's about, you know, moving forward. It's about like living for other people. It's so much more than I thought it was, and it's so much better than I thought it was. And so lately it's just been moving further and further. What's that line in Narnia? At the end, they go further up and further in, right? That's their whole further up and further in. So that's just been the last, 5-10 years of my life, is just pushing in and realizing what this is really about. And just, yeah. So it's funny how it starts when you're 5, but it takes your entire life to realize not only what this is all about, but then realizing what your part in all of it is. And yeah, it's simple, but it's a lifelong thing.
Well, and that's why I asked, because, when you're a child born into that environment, you kind of just, as the old term goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Yeah.
So you kind of just following leads, but then there has to come a point where you as an individual decide, understand, and realize what this is really all about. And then that's where the rubber meets the road. Like, okay, Lord, I really know who you are. And I really want you to come into my heart. Not that you never meant it when you did it as a child, but there has to come a point where you really get the understanding of everything and go, okay, is this true or is this not true? Not just because my parents said so, or my parish said so. What do I think? So it's interesting. Your response to the question's pretty good. I love it. As a man of God who's a comedian, right? You're on stage. We have a certain standard that we should try to live up to. What do you do when you're dealing with hecklers? How do you handle people like that in an audience, Matt?
Whew. Okay, so that's been a journey too, Maurice.
Okay.
So can I don't know how vulnerable you want me to get here, but let's just go for it.
Okay.
I didn't start, like, I realized that me being funny is a defense mechanism, like most comedians. It started as this like thing to deflect pain, to keep bullies away, to find my place, et cetera, et cetera. And I've realized that I never really got over any of that. So when I would get heckled, especially early on, I reverted right back to that little kid getting picked on, or, the guy who felt super insecure. So what I would do is I would lash out at the heckler in the beginning. In the beginning, I would just tear them down. I knew I had one talent, and that was I was good with my words. So there was no way that this guy is going to make me feel little ever again. So I just would rip them a new one. And I remember, and I did this pretty late into my career. I remember one time I was at a comedy club and my brother-in-law was there. Okay. And my wife was there, and some of my other family members were there. And there was this heckler who I'd made a joke about marriage, and this heckler kind of like said something to me about marriage and about me, and it was personal, but not really. Anyway, I think it was because my wife was in the crowd that I also felt even more like attacked, and I went off. I didn't, I didn't swear, nothing like that, but I used every weapon in my arsenal to make him feel as small as humanly possible.
Wow.
And my brother-in-law at the end of the show came to me and he goes, "Dude, that was intense." And it made me kind of take a step back and went like, well, what? He deserved it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, something started shifting in me. And I started realizing my job is not to rip people down. My job is to build people up. Yeah. And if I have a heckler who wants to ruin the show, but I'm so insecure that I can't take it and I rip him down, that says more about me than it does about him. So I've been realizing, if I want to handle a heckler and deal with a heckler, I need to do it in a way that builds them up too. Because if it's really not about me, then it has to be about all of them, including this guy who just interrupted my show or said something rude to me. So I've been developing techniques to handle hecklers at the same time as building them up. So now I interact with them. If they'll say something, no matter if it's rude or if it's kind, I'll talk with them. I'll ask them some questions, and I'll do something that I'll start complimenting them. Is what I'll actually end up doing. So it typically ends up looking like well, sure, you would say that. Look at you. You got great hair. You got that amazing looking beard. If it was you, Maurice, I would say, look how good you look in that hat. I can't pull off a hat like that. If I could pull off a hat like that, then maybe I would be a heckler too. I could yell stuff at the comedian, but this is all I got, sir. So please just let me finish my act, because this is all I have. Look what all you have. You got your good looks. You got your chain. You look good in a blazer. I'm wearing a sweater. I got nothing. Just let me have this. So it would be something like that. And then you turn the tables, and then they realize, oh, he's not attacking me. And they feel good about themselves. And at the same time, they shut up. So
I love it. I love it, Matt. And now when you were going on this tirade before you learn how to stop doing that, what was the audience? Were they laughing when you were tearing the person down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So okay.
They love it.
So,
now
they love it. The audiences, they generally love that. Yes.
Oh yeah. If there's a heckler and you can tear them a new one, those are the videos that go viral. You know what I mean? The people love it. But and I had fun doing it too. But yeah.
Well, and that's the difference right there between a secular comic and a faith-based comic, because I have a lot of, comedy friends who live to destroy a heckler. They're secular comics, and they're really good at it. And the audience actually wants you to do that. But I've learned the same thing that you've learned, and that is you first of all, you don't attack them. Secondly, appease them. Say something that's going to make them feel like, you're lifting them up.
Yeah.
And that you're almost actually helping my set. Oh, sir, not only that, hold on, you're going to love the rest of this. I might say something like that or what have you, and the person will go, oh, then now they want to hear what I'm going to say, and they'll shut up. There are little techniques that you can use to get a heckler to go from being mean to just sitting down and thinking that, oh, maybe I should respect this guy. He's not bothering anybody.
Yeah.
95%. Yeah.
I was going to say too, I totally agree. I think that's brilliant. This technique, I was inspired actually by a couple other secular comics. There's comics that are great hosts at Rumors Comedy Club in Winnipeg, and they did this technique where someone would heckle, and then they would say, "Feel free to heckle during my set, but when the headliner comes on, don't do it. You can do it to me. I'm just the opener, whatever." And they would take the bullet, and that really inspired me too to go like, "Wow." And you know what? And I think what's really interesting, you go, if a secular comic who has no motivation to do this outside of themselves is willing to take the bullet and lay their life down, how much more should Christian comics be willing to do this? I think we got to be held to a higher standard. If like the world should be able to look at us and go, there's something really different. Not like, oh, not like we're separated because we never play comedy clubs, or the way that they attack atheists and all this kind of stuff. Not like that. It should be by our love, the way we love an audience, the way we love other comedians. That should be the way people look at us and go, wow, something's special, something's different here.
The only time, to be honest with you, the only time I've ever, and I wouldn't really qualify this or as an attack, but I was doing a show. Guy had been drinking. He was angry. He didn't like the joke I was telling or the line of jokes that I was telling, and he actually charged the stage. Right? The guy charges the stage. Yeah. And I go, everybody take it easy. Calm down. Calm down. He's just excited after the show. We're going to go chase Pokemon. It's okay. Right. And so everybody started laughing, and he turned around and he went back. He muttered his way back to a seat. He sat out, didn't say another word, but it was like kind of embarrassing for him because I didn't get mad. I didn't go to the place that he was in. But I just made a little joke just to let him understand that, I'm the one with the microphone.
Yeah.
And you're powerless, honestly. Right. But still I didn't attack him. I wasn't really mean.
Yeah.
You know,
And
he
I
wasn't
should
like mad
say
at me
too.
for real.
Yeah, and I should say too, I don't always succeed in this. You know, there are
Yeah.
times when I go on stage today where a heckler will heckle me or someone will say something and I'll go right back to that insecure kid and
Yeah.
I'll say something that I immediately regret and then I'll try to fix it on stage or I'll just feel bad about it later. But the point is that there's this growth, there's this intention, and there's this purposefulness, and we're moving towards something, from glory to glory. We're going towards something better, never satisfied with where we are, but we want to grow because we want everyone to experience God's love. And I don't want to be a hindrance to that. I don't want to be the comic that, stopped someone from understanding the love of God just because I got insecure.
Exactly. I love your transparency in talking about where you are in that particular situation. I could tell that's something, and we all have weaknesses, Matt. I mean, we all do, and you're very forthright and honest about your weakness in that area. I didn't even have any idea. I might have pressed something that was really something that you're kind of like dealing with right now and trying to power through, because as comics, it's part of the game. And as a Christian, that's one of the places where we're tested, where our faith is concerned, because he's a Christian guy. He doesn't cuss. He's a reverend. They even call me the reverend in some places. And so they're like expecting a higher standard from you.
Yeah.
They're expecting it, and you have to deliver what God has called us to do. And it's not easy. So thank you for being transparent about that. I want to ask you another question. I read an article about, because comedy is a brutal game. There's it's violent. There are a lot of violent words connected with comedy. And bombing is one of them. I remember an article I read where you had an experience, I think, at a corporate event where it was, I guess, arguably maybe one of the, or if not the most painful experiences as a comic for you. Would you care to share a little bit about that experience?
I think I know. If you said you read an article about it, then I think I know which one you're talking about. So I had, it was during corporate season. So I just punch in the coordinates on my GPS and I just drive to wherever this little arena is, or this little community hall or comedy club or theater. But my GPS starts bringing me down this residential neighborhood. And I start looking around going, this can't be right. And then I get to the destination and it's a house. I'm going, okay, it's a house. It's a house party. Okay, that's fine. So I knock on the door. The guy opens it up. He says, let's go in the basement. So I go in the basement. Don't, by the way, just follow people into their basement. That's never good.
I don't think that'd be a good idea.
But in this case, it was fine. I go down there and it was a company. It was a company Christmas party, but it was a small company. There's 4 people.
Okay.
4 people just on the, and I right away, I was like, oh, I like verschlucked on fear. I was terrified. I was like, oh, and the guy looked at me and I swear, he goes, oh, don't worry. Not everyone's here yet. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm early. There's going to be like a bus of people that show up later. And he goes, yeah, Tina's not here. So it was like, and if you want to hear the whole story, it's in my dry bar act. It's the last bit I do in my dry bar set, but I basically sat down with the audience and we just waited to start because I was there 15 minutes early. So we're just chatting before. So it's like a pre-show. I'm still working because like they're looking at me. They're right there. I'm in my socks. This is the most awkward experience of my life. And then the guy just kind of mumbles something and goes, hey, go ahead, start. So I just stood up. There we go. I just stood up and I just started talking louder. And I did 45 minutes in this basement with 4 people just staring at me a foot away, just awkwardly kind of giggling. It was insanely uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh. And I'm sure you got paid for it.
I did get paid, and that's all I was thinking about. That's all I was just thinking. I was thinking, just get the check and walk out of here because this is it. But it's because in a comedy club, there's some distance, there's elevation. You're a little bit higher than them. And there's a crowd, and the group becomes one entity. It becomes a unit, one blob that you're trying to kind of control. And with 4 people, you can't turn 4 people into a blob, Maurice, as much as you want to try, because you can see Sheila, Ed, and Terry, and Gavin. You can see them all. They're right there. And when one person doesn't laugh, that's 25% of your audience. You know what I mean?
True.
So it was a rough room, but it wasn't the worst gig I've ever done.
Well, as you spoke a little bit about, how you deal with heckling, and as we're talking about bombing now, are you the type of person, because it happens to every comic, I mean, it's just, you can't avoid the bombs.
Yeah.
When that happens to you, are you the type of person, Matt, that can like brush it off immediately? Okay, that went bad, I'll be back tomorrow. Or are you the kind of person it takes like a few days to get over?
I'm the type of person that 4 years after the incident, I'm talking about it on stage. Do I get over it? No, I don't get over it. I have every single bomb I've ever done, I still think about on a regular basis. There is no way. I don't think I'll ever get over the shows that I bomb, because they're so, like, I want to, and I know what the right answer is. I know, hey, my identity isn't wrapped up in any of this stuff. I shouldn't worry about it. But you can't, I personally, I just, once in a while, they come back to me. I remember when I first started doing this, I started off as a magician. I don't know if you knew that. So I was doing kids' parties, and then I transitioned into stand-up comedy. And I remember one of the first shows was at an elementary school. They said, come, you can do magic, you can do comedy, so the kids will be entertained, the adults will be entertained. So I did an hour-long set when I had no business being on stage for an hour. I maybe had 20 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
And the kids were bored half an hour through. I remember a dad fell asleep in the second row. Like, it was in a gymnasium. All the lights were on. I could see him. He was right there, and he was just sleeping. And I did such a bad job. I remember walking away, carrying my case full of magic tricks down the street. Like, I could like hear the theme song to Charlie Brown going through my da 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 da. Like, I was just depressed. And then I remember hearing someone yell out to me, Matt! And I turn around, and I'm like this 16-year-old kid turn around, and she's like, you forgot your check. Because I hadn't got paid yet. I was getting my $50 or whatever it was. And she walks towards me and hands me the check. And I took it. And there was that moment where we were both holding on to it, where she was kind of looking at me like, are you sure you want to take this? And I was like, yes, I do. Anyway, so I want to get over these things, but no, I think about my bad shows regularly. I'm getting better. I got it. You mentioned Chappelle earlier.
Yeah.
Chappelle is a big influence on me as of late. I remember I watched I've been watching some stuff he did recently, and particularly that phenomenal set where he did Outside after the murder of George Floyd. And the way he talked and the way he was so confident in the audience response, he was talking about some very important, very serious things. And while he was talking, the audience wasn't always laughing. And he was so confident and able to keep them with him. And I was so inspired by that. I just realized I don't need to always be getting laughs. I can be saying things that are important. And if the audience doesn't respond in exactly the way I want them to, I mean, I'm not saying anything nearly as important as he was on that night, but I realized, wow, I can just stand there and I can be comfortable in the silence and just allow that to. My wife says it great. She says, you're an actor, right? I said, yes. And she says, just act like you're confident. So I thought that was a brilliant idea. So I've started to do these things where I pretend like I'm more confident on stage than I really am. And it works. And now lately, if an audience doesn't respond to a joke the way I want to, or I say something serious and important and the audience is quiet because they're a little bit uncomfortable, I just let it sit there. And I've been getting more and more comfortable with that. So lately, I feel like I've been less worried about the response from the audience and more worried about, do I feel like I did the best I could in that moment?
And I think that's when you're really going to the next level as a stand-up, when you're comfortable with silence.
Yeah.
Like, if no one's laughing, so what? I mean, I'm in command. I'm confident about what I'm saying. Yeah. And, you just keep going. And I think that Dave Chappelle is good at that. Jerry Seinfeld's good at that. Some of your upper tier comedians are very comfortable on stage. They don't have to be killing all the time.
Yeah,
You know?
Trevor Noah is one of those comics too, where you watch his stand up. He has these long setups where
Yeah.
he'll spend like a minute and a half, 2 minutes setting up a bit where I'm like, how do you do that? How do you spend so long and then he'll do the payoff, 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 payoff. But he spends so long and he's so comfortable with those moments where he'll stop, he'll look at the audience and he'll say his thing in a very Trevor Noah way. And you kind of just like, you're with him. You're just so entranced by every move that he makes. So yeah, there's some of the masters, they figured out that a long time ago.
And another thing, Matt, is to wait for it. Like, you know, you tell your jokes. Sometimes you just got to like just kind of bathe in the punchline and just kind of like let it marinate and settle. Let them laugh as long as they want to laugh. And then move on.
And that's so hard to do as well, especially when the show isn't going the way you want it to. You'll do a joke and you just want to go into the next one. Keep them going, keep them going. But it's all insecurity. I remember I did a college gig one time. I'm not sure if you've heard of a comedian by the name of K. Trevor Wilson. Trevor Wilson, he's a Canadian comic, but he's making huge strides in America and he's becoming insanely popular. He's on a show.
Look him up. Wow. Okay.
You got to look him up. He's brilliant. And I did a gig with him where I went on first, and I was so frantic because the audience was walking around and they were like getting drinks and chatting with each other. And I was going louder and louder and louder and louder to try to get their attention.
Yeah.
And the show was like, okay. So I was like, oh, whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, K. Trevor Wilson. I leave. He comes up. He walks up to the microphone. He stands totally still. And he goes, hello. And the audience is dead quiet. And they just stare at him. And then he goes into his routine. And he's got this cadence where it's very slow.
Yeah.
And he never sped it up. Every pause he milked. The audience all came, they sat down, and they hung on every single word, and he completely controlled the audience. That was a master class for me. Watching a comic like K-Trev do that, I realized right then and there, let them come to you. Let them come to you. So this is a journey, just like we were talking about our faith, you know, starts when you're 5 years old and it's a lifelong thing. Comedy is the same way, not nearly as important, but it's the same thing. I started so young, but this is going to take me my entire life to figure out how to do this properly.
Stand-up comedy, in my opinion, is the purest form there is in the arts. I mean, you can talk about singing, acting, you know, you mentioned magic, you name it, anything, you can name anything. And they're all difficult things to pull off because you're doing a public performance. But stand-up comedy, in my opinion, is the purest form and the most challenging form there is in the arts, because what you're essentially doing is you're making a room full of total strangers your buddy for the next 15, 30 minutes, however long you're going to be up there, half of which you would never hold a conversation with in front of a Walmart.
Yeah.
That's right. You would never talk to half of these people, but now you're gonna be my best buddy though for the next half hour, and pulling that off is absolutely miraculous. That's
and pulling it off when they don't want you to. Sometimes you go on stage and the audience is immediately hostile towards you. Like at a corporate event, they don't want to be there. They showed up because their boss told them that they had to be there. You know, they're there for to get their steak and they want to leave because they're going to be getting their bonuses at the end of the night. But now they got to sit through this comic that they've never heard of. Like when you come up against an audience that's even antagonistic and trying to win them over, it's so much fun. And it's
have you ever had those people, Matt, that are like non-laughers, but they like you? Like you're looking at them and it's like, this guy's not laughing a single thing. I'm gonna go to this side of the room or whatever, because you try to ignore people like that. They're not having fun. So at the end of the show, they go, man, you were great. And I go, but you didn't. Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I don't want to even explain what I saw with my eyes. And they genuinely liked you. They just don't laugh. Have you ever seen anything like that? Absolutely.
Like I've had people come to me after shows and they go like, that was the most fun I've had in a very long time. And I'm like, as my buddy Chris Funk would say, tell your face. You know what I mean? It's like, why the entire show were you sitting there like this if you were having the best time of your life? And my wife, she tells me too, she's like, some people just don't laugh. Some people, it just takes a lot for them to make that verbal sound with their mouth. And you just got to be okay with wherever people are. And if people are there and they're not laughing, just trust. Even if you have to lie to yourself, just trust that they're having fun and go with it. And she's right. 9 times out of 10, you end a show, and as long as you stay confident and you keep the show going, those non-laughers, they'll come up to you, like exactly like you said, and they'll say, that was hilarious. And you go, that I would have never known.
And think of how the Lord is using you when you're doing stuff like that. It's rewarding to hear it, because you just made someone's day. This person probably doesn't laugh in his life, and there's a reason they're that way, and it's not a good reason. But it made that you made their day. Yeah. You know, they so appreciate it. That time you were on stage is probably the most fun they've had for some people in years, depending on where they are.
Yeah.
And that's a medicine. That's a healing balm that God has imparted unto us to get up there and make strangers laugh. You know, and you're doing it for the Lord. I like what you said earlier, way earlier in this conversation. It's not about us, it's about Christ. And it's always got to be about him. And he's doing work through us up there. All the other things that, you know, we would like to have, you know, let God take care of that. He will take care of that. Yeah. But we have to be up there and make it about him. That's right. Bottom line. And of course, it's hard sometimes when you get in too many plaudits. But Matt, I gotta say this to you. This has been this hour went by like that, dude. Great conversation. Let me ask you this. What is the biggest thing that you have learned? I mean, you might have answered it already, but I'll throw it out anyway. What's the biggest thing in comedy that you have learned that has made you a better comic?
I think it's the confidence thing. I think realizing that an audience wants to feel comfortable. You know, Jim Carrey said he would rack his brain to figure out what an audience wants, and they want to feel comfortable. That's why he started doing the bit where he'd walk on stage and say, "Hello, how are you? All righty then," because he realized they don't want to respond. And if I make it look like I don't even care how they're feeling, I'm just going to keep going, then they'll feel comfortable and go, "Oh, he doesn't even need us. He's so confident. He doesn't even need us right now." So it's that. It's like my wife said, act like you're confident. So I'll do certain things on stage. Like I'll walk to the front of the stage so go to the front, pretend you're not afraid of the audience, look up at the rafters. I see you up there. I see you up there. You know, I fake that confidence because the audience picks up on it. They'll be more comfortable. They're going to enjoy themselves more. And eventually you might even trick yourself. And then soon enough, you go like half an hour into the set, you go, I am feeling pretty confident right now. So I think that's with stand-up comedy, one of the biggest things I've learned.
Well, the analogy you gave about the Wilson comedian you were speaking of, K. Trevor Wilson, is that
K. Trevor Wilson? Yes. Yeah.
So I think what you have to take the room. Now, everybody's got their styles. So many different, like he has this slow, deliberate style. That's his style. He owns that style. Yeah. You know, and you got to take command of the room. You have to take the room, and the audience needs to know you're in control. That's the number one thing that I learned years ago about doing stand-up. Just take control. I did a show once. I had a comedian friend that was in the audience, and she said, "Maurice, you owned it." What I did a joke, and oh my gosh, I forgot what she said, but it's all about taking ownership of every joke. Oh, she said, "No, Maurice, you committed. You committed." She kept screaming that, and that's what you got to do. You got to commit to every joke. Don't hesitate. Don't hold back. Whatever you're gonna do, let it rip.
That's right.
But it doesn't have to be, you know, animated or anything like that. But whatever the style is, own it.
That's exactly it. Whatever your style is, that's exactly it. Do it 100%. Be alive, be present when you're on stage. You're totally right. Commit to it. Commit to it.
You commit it, Matt. This has been a great, man. I had so many other things I wanted to say. I got to have you on for another show, dude. I didn't even ask half the questions I wanted to ask.
That'd be great. Anytime.
Awesome stuff, man. Is there any advice that you could share with young aspiring comedians, particularly in the faith-based world?
Get on stage and just do it. You have to do it. Find a mentor as well. If you want to do this, like I had Leland Clausen mentor me. It's good to have accountability. It's good to have someone to give you advice and help you kind of walk and walk through the ropes of this whole thing. But the biggest thing is get on stage. There's no substitute for stage time. You got to do it. And then if you're a faith-based comic, know why you're doing it and really know why you're doing it, and make love your number one motivation, and everything else is going to fall into place after that.
Awesome stuff, Matt. I love it. And how can fans follow you on social media and or by website?
Well, check out my website, mattfalkcomedy.com. All my social media is at mattfalkcomedy. That's MATTFALK comedy. And I'm doing a big live show online December 20th. Myself and two magicians are going to be doing this big live streaming show. Tickets are $15. You can go to mattfalkcomedy.com/live, and then you can get the tickets there. Awesome stuff. And send me the information, and I will help you get that out there. The information. Hey, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with the very funny and the very talented Matt Falk on the Maurice Brown Show. Matt, thank you so much for being on, and may the peace of Christ be with you and your family, sir. God bless you. Thank you very much. This was an absolute pleasure. This was wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.